In this video, we're diving into a defining moment in Middle East politics, the 2017 Gulf diplomatic crisis, a clash that pitted Qatar against Saudi Arabia and its allies in a high-stakes showdown. At the center of this storm was Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, Qatar's emir, who took the stage at the UN General Assembly in September 2017 to deliver a speech that was both a defiant defense and a call for justice. We'll unpack his words, Saudi Arabia's fiery accusations, Qatar's response, the geopolitical stakes, and the lasting impact of this feud. Buckle up. This is a story of power, rivalry, and reconciliation. On June 5th, 2017, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Bahrain, and Egypt stunned the world by cutting diplomatic ties with Qatar, shutting borders, and imposing a blockade that halted air, sea, and land access. Their reason was that Qatar was a destabilizing force accused of supporting terrorism, cozying up to Iran, and meddling in its neighbors' affairs. Saudi Arabia's then foreign minister, Adel al-Jubeir, became the international face of this campaign, delivering blistering accusations that went viral. In a 2017 speech in the US, he stunned audiences, saying Saudi Arabia just doesn't want anything to do with Qatar until it changes its behavior. Al-Jubeir's list of grievances was dramatic. He accused Qatar of sponsoring extremists since the 1990s, allowing clerics to justify suicide bombings on TV, harboring terrorists, paying $500 million in ransom to Hezbollah in Iraq, and $50 million to Iran's Qasem Soleimani. He claimed Qatar sent weapons to al-Qaeda-linked militias in Libya and cited leaked tapes suggesting Qatar's emir schemed with Gaddafi to overthrow Saudi Arabia. Al-Jubeir painted Qatar as an arch-schemer, predicting the Saudi monarchy's downfall within a decade. Yet, he insisted, we have no hostility towards Qatar. We just vehemently oppose their behavior, which has endangered our citizens and our security. At the UN that September, he doubled down, demanding Qatar stop its support for terrorism that had destabilized the region. Saudi Arabia's official channels echoed this narrative. The foreign ministry accused Qatar of embracing terrorist and sectarian groups like the Muslim Brotherhood, ISIS, and al-Qaeda, and inciting chaos through media like Al Jazeera. Saudi's UN envoy, al-Mualimi, framed Qatar as colluding with Iran to create regional chaos. Even Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman weighed in, calling the rift a small problem, but defending the blockade to curb Qatar's extremism funding. From King Salman's cabinet to state media, the message was unified. Qatar must overhaul its policies for the sake of Gulf security. Fast forward to today, post-2021 reconciliation, Saudi rhetoric has softened, emphasizing GCC unity. But clips of al-Jubeir's fiery speeches still circulate online, and as recently as 2023, Saudi media revisited these accusations to remind audiences why they acted. While Saudi Arabia now focuses on rapprochement under MBS, officials quietly urge Qatar to honor commitments from the Al-Ula agreement, like cracking down on terror financing to prevent future rifts. Now let's hear Qatar's side. From day one, Qatar categorically rejected these accusations, calling them baseless and exaggerated. Sheikh Tamim and his foreign minister, Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdul Rahman Al Thani, insisted Qatar has never supported extremism or terrorism. In interviews, the foreign minister called Saudi's claims vague accusations without solid arguments, challenging them to provide proof. Qatar highlighted its role in the US-led coalition against ISIS, its prosecution of terror financiers, and a 2017 US-Qatar counterterrorism agreement, among the first in the region. They argued their record was stronger than some of their accusers. On specific charges, Qatar clarified its engagement with groups like the Muslim Brotherhood and Hamas was for dialogue and conflict resolution, not destabilization. Doha's mediation between the US and the Taliban, or hosting Sudan peace talks, was proof of its constructive role, they said, not evidence of militancy. As for Iran, Qatar admitted to diplomatic ties and a shared gas field, but denied supporting Tehran's agendas. At the UN on September 19, 2017, Sheikh Tamim delivered a searing rebuttal. The countries who impose the blockade on Qatar interfere in the internal affairs of many countries and accuse all those who oppose them of terrorism. By doing so, they are inflicting damage on the war on terror. He pointed out the irony of Qatar hosting a US airbase crucial to anti-ISIS operations while being branded a traitor. Qatar consistently called for dialogue and evidence, with Tamim and his foreign minister thanking Kuwait's mediation and expressing readiness to discuss legitimate grievances in a framework respecting sovereignty. But they criticized the blockading states for airing accusations via media without proof. And when Saudi issued 13 demands, including closing Al Jazeera, Qatar rejected them as infringing on its independence. Tamim framed Qatar as a victim of aggression, rallying national pride at home and highlighting the blockade's humanitarian toll, like splitting families and disrupting trade. In his July 2017 address, he declared, "We have refused to yield to dictation by pressure and siege," emphasizing Qatar's relentless fight against terrorism. Quietly, Qatar took steps to address concerns, enacting new counterterrorism laws, tightening charity oversight, and expelling some Hamas members in 2018 under U.S. pressure. By 2020, Al Jazeera toned down its criticism of Gulf neighbors. But Qatar never admitted to Saudi's gravest charges. Maintaining the blockade was unjust. The 2021 Al Ula reconciliation was a face-saving compromise, with Qatar celebrating restored Gulf unity while upholding its sovereignty. So, why was Saudi Arabia so relentless? This wasn't just about terrorism, it was a battle of ideologies and power. Saudi Arabia, under MBS, and alongside the UAE's Mohammed bin Zayed, saw Islamist movements like the Muslim Brotherhood as existential threats to their monarchies. Qatar's willingness to engage these groups, especially during the Arab Spring, clashed with Saudi's preference for authoritarian stability. Riyadh feared Qatar's alliances could inspire dissent at home or erode its regional influence. Then there was the power struggle. Qatar, a small state with vast gas wealth, punched above its weight, mediating conflicts, hosting U.S. bases, and even the Taliban's office. This irked Saudi Arabia, which saw itself as the Gulf's natural leader. By accusing Qatar of destabilization, Riyadh aimed to delegitimize Doha's activism and reassert dominance. The blockade was widely seen as an attempt to force policy change or even regime change in Qatar. External alignments fueled the fire. Saudi portrayed Qatar's ties with Iran as collusion with the Gulf's chief rival, especially after Iran supplied Qatar during the blockade. Qatar's partnership with Turkey, which sent troops in 2017, was another sore point, given Turkey's support for Islamists. Meanwhile, Saudi felt emboldened by early U.S. support under President Trump, who initially backed the blockade, but the U.S. later pushed for reconciliation, wary of a divided Gulf strengthening Iran. Regional flashpoints like Egypt, Libya, Syria, and Yemen became battlegrounds for this rivalry. Qatar's support for Egypt's Brotherhood or Libya's Tripoli factions clashed with Saudi-backed forces. In Syria, both funded rebels but backed rival groups, accusing each other of empowering extremists. These conflicts gave Saudi ammunition to paint Qatar as a sponsor of chaos, rallying international support to isolate Doha. Domestically, MBS used the Qatar feud to bolster his image as a decisive leader, justifying crackdowns on dissenters allegedly linked to Qatar. The UAE and Bahrain similarly hyped Qatar's influence to tighten control over their own Islamist circles. This was as much about regime security as regional dominance. The Saudi-Qatar rift shook the Gulf and beyond. The Gulf Cooperation Council, meant to foster unity, was fractured for over 3 years, with meetings boycotted and initiatives stalled. Kuwait and Oman's mediation, especially Kuwait's late emir, was crucial, but the crisis exposed the GCC's fragility. The 2021 Al Ula agreement restored ties, but trust is still rebuilding, and new dispute resolution mechanisms are needed. The U.S., a key ally to both nations, was caught in the middle. Trump's early support for Saudi contrasted with the Pentagon's reliance on Qatar's Al Udeid air base for anti-ISIS operations. By 2018, Washington pushed for reconciliation, culminating in Al Ula. In 2022, the U.S. named Qatar a major non-NATO ally, signaling confidence post-crisis while maintaining strong Saudi ties. The feud rippled across the Middle East. It hampered efforts in Libya and Afghanistan, but reconciliation opened new cooperation, like joint mediation in Sudan or complementary roles in Afghanistan's 2021 evacuations. However, divergences remain, especially on Israel-Palestine. Qatar's ties to Hamas, used for Gaza aid and mediation, contrast with Saudi's broader Palestinian advocacy without direct Hamas links. Qatar's role in the 2023 Gaza war mediation highlighted its diplomatic utility, but also the philosophical divide with Saudi. Smaller states felt the pressure too. Egypt and Jordan sided with Saudi, losing Qatari aid, while Turkey and Iran gained leverage by supporting Qatar. Reconciliation eased these tensions, allowing Qatar to mend ties with Egypt and focus on regional priorities. Economically, Qatar became more self-sufficient, diversifying trade with Turkey and Iran, while Saudi and UAE businesses lost Qatari markets. Societally, the blockade's pain, split families, propaganda wars, left scars, though restored ties are healing these wounds. Sheikh Tamim's 2017 UN speech was more than a defense. It was a stand for Qatar's sovereignty and a call for dialogue in a divided Gulf. Saudi Arabia's accusations, from backing terrorists to aligning with Iran, revealed a deeper struggle over the Middle East's future. Saudi's vision of authoritarian stability versus Qatar's independent diplomacy. The 2017-2021 blockade tested alliances, fractured the GCC, and reshaped regional dynamics, but the Al Ula reconciliation proved diplomacy could prevail. Today, Saudi Arabia and Qatar are focused on cooperation, mediating conflicts, investing in each other's projects, and navigating new challenges like Sudan and Yemen. But the issues that sparked this crisis, Islamism, media freedom, and ties with Iran and Turkey, remain sensitive. The Gulf learned a hard lesson. Unity is fragile, and mistrust can spiral. As Sheikh Tamim said, infighting only weakens the fight against shared threats. Let's hope both nations keep that in mind, building a stronger, more united Gulf for the future.